What is up, watch fan? I am Christian from Theo and Harris, and today I'm here at London Jewelers' Manhasset location with my friend Anthony.
What's going on, guys? My name is Anthony. I'm one of the managers here at London Jewelers in Manhasset.
And we're talking about two watch collections. I would hate to have one as I like to own a whole host of things, but if we were forced to have two watches, which two would they be? So we both ran around their enormous watch salon here and looked at a bunch of brands, but we both settled on two separate watches from brands that maybe you're not going to expect. So let's get into it. All right, Anthony, before we get into it, what are you wearing on your wrist?
I am wearing my Panerai 312. Typically, I wouldn't wear a watch this large with a suit, but I just think it's kind of cool.
No, it's a great looking watch. You know, we said this before, Panerai is one of the very, very few brands that even if you remove the name from the dial, it's so distinctive,
Absolutely.
And if anything looks like a Panerai, that means they're copying it, Another one of those kind of iconic classic watches, very distinct. I'm wearing a Datejust, actually. Most people would think it was a Datejust from the bracelet, but this is a Rolex Datejust, reference 1601. It was actually my dad's watch, but I steal it now and again, and I like the Las Vegas kind of feel. So while I love this watch, it's not versatile enough to be a one-watch collection watch, not at least for me. So in looking around, I said, okay, I obviously like thinness, right? I'm a big proportions guy. Both these watches are actually on the larger side, but I wanted to pick out watches that we don't talk about as often, right? I considered going into Cartier. I'm a big Cartier fan. I could probably wear a tank every day for the rest of my life and be just happy, but I wanted to go a different route. And I think that Nomos represents so much value. And this is a great example. This is their Tangente Neomatik. This is the 39. It's actually 38.5 millimeters, which is oddly specific, but I think that this is a fantastic watch, and while dressy, still very versatile and kind of young and still sporty.
Yeah, I'd happen to agree. I think they're doing amazing things right now, and it's nice to kind of go outside of Switzerland a bit and realize that other countries are making amazing watches. And I think Nomos in the last few years are really doing something special and really catching on in the watch segment.
Agreed. Take a look at this dial. This is, they call it their Silvercut dial. I love that fine brushing. I actually can't think of another brand that's doing something like that. There is graining, there is brushing that exists in the market, but this is horizontal. I think it's actually a pretty coarse brushing. Again, dials aren't really done like that so much anymore. The thing that comes to my mind is, rewinding, going back to, the Patek 570s, the Calatravas, the oversized examples. I believe in platinum or in white gold, they had a brushing kind of finish, which was quite beautiful. I believe that watch is the watch that's being basically reissued with the 5196 in P. Anyway, they're different, of course, but there's that textural thing going on there. It adds a lot of visual interest.
Absolutely. I think also what makes it stand out is the simplicity of the case, that you're instantly attracted to the dial, which I would think would almost be understated, but being the case is so simple, it really brings it out quite a bit. And I think more so in the last few years, I'm really starting to pay attention more to dials and how they're made and the aesthetics of it. I really think that this is really stunning, and the color I absolutely love.
And it's thin. It's 7.2 millimeters. It's a pretty thin watch. It's not ultra thin, but it's an automatic. So that's actually really impressive. Again, great proportions. So this is definitely one of the watches that stood out to me. Again, a youthful brand. It's still very classic. It's the kind of brand that I recommend to people that are kind of just getting into the idea of wearing a more dressy watch, because there's balance there. Now, our next watch, while very sporty, still very elegant. This is Bulgari's Octo Finissimo. This is in titanium, in a sandblasted finish. I don't know if it's flattering on my wrist. It's absolutely stunning. I think it's one of the few truly original designs that exist on the market right now. So I adore it.
Yeah, I agree. And if you really look closely at it, especially the movement, I mean, it's just so well finished and so well made. And In this market right now, where a lot of people are going after 5 or 6 different watches, it's really cool to have something super unique and very different. And not to mention, like I said, the finishing is just spectacular. I love that it has the micro rotor on the case back, allowing it to be this thin. Bulgari, as you know, goes back and forth with other brands like Piaget to make the thinnest watch possible. So sometimes people don't associate them with, fine watchmaking, but I mean, some of the stuff they're putting out, especially their movements, are fantastic.
What's super interesting about this watch, obviously its thinness jumps out. That watch measures 5.5 millimeters thick. Really, the Octo Finissimo was introduced back in 2014, and the Octo Finissimo was kind of, the case and the design that was housing like their really incredible complications. First their tourbillon, and then I think a year or two later, a minute repeater. So the Octo Finissimo wasn't at its inception like a quote-unquote entry level. It's $14,500. Of course, it's expensive, but that is like more on the entry level as far as complications end. So the original, these were super complicated watches, super expensive, and I love that they took that design and they brought it again. $14,500 isn't cheap, but they brought it into the somewhat more approachable end of the market, the more democratic end of the market.
A movement this well finished and this thin coming from a different brand could easily be double the price.
Oh yeah, a watch like that really makes you think about, what should you be getting dollar for dollar in the watch industry. The movement itself is actually a 2.23 millimeters thick. So really thin. And like you mentioned before, Piaget and Bulgari go back and forth, right, to kind of steal this title from each other. But what's so cool is, if you go back into history, those two brands actually worked side by side. I actually bought myself a really beautiful, I believe it's Piaget or it's Bulgari. It's one of the two, but there's made in collaboration, so it's double stamped.
Oh wow!
It's co-signed, yeah.
Wow, very cool.
And what's even crazier is it's actually basically in a Tank Normal, which is the original Cartier tank case, because Cartier was working with Piaget at the time. So really, in the 70s, you had these 3 brands, Piaget, Bulgari, and Cartier, working side by side together producing watches. So, everyone thinks now, in-house, but there's a lot more collaboration historically than people understand.
Absolutely.
And that watch is also offered in different materials now. Black ceramic
right.
and rose gold, and steel.
Right. So right now we actually have an all ceramic piece with a skeletonized dial. Very cool. So different variations of it, but I think something about the titanium wears really well.
Yeah, the titanium was, I think that was the first, the time only, that was the first one that came out in titanium. Now it's also in rose and in steel in a couple of different finishes. Again, this watch, it gets credit, in watch spaces, but it doesn't get the credit it deserves.
So I guess lastly, why these two? What made you drawn to these two watches?
I think a couple of things. Obviously, there's something on the sports side, something on the dress side. Both are well balanced, like both are still elegant, which means a lot to me. And I think, the other thing for me is there's originality here, right? And if I have to be confined to 2 watches, which would not be ideal for me. I prefer to have multiple watches. If I have to have 2, I want those 2 to be watches that I don't just enjoy, but that I really admire. Not just their beauty, but in their conception and all that stuff. I like to be interested in the things I own. So these 2 watches would definitely continue to interest me moving forward. So let's talk about your 2 watches, huh?
Cool. So first we'll go with the JLC Reverso, and every time we get together, it seems like we just keep talking about the Reverso, and it's a watch I've never had in my collection. But when it comes down to it, I just can't think of a more iconic watch than the Reverso. I decided to go with the small variation of it because I do have a smaller wrist. But I think that most of these watches, doesn't matter what size, whether it's a small, medium, or even the large, they wear larger. And I wanted to go with the solid case back, being originally, when it was introduced, that's what it had for polo players. Right.
It's a beautiful watch. When I thought that was the medium, and then when you pointed out it was the small, just before we recorded, I was taken aback, because I think that's a proper size small watch. Right, it's not dainty, it's not petite. That watch fits, I think, your wrist really well and mine as well. I've tried on the medium as well, and again, obviously it's bigger, but still not an oversized watch. Still not oversized.
Right, and I wanted to go with a white dial, and I just love the pop of the blue heat-treated hands. Yeah. And like everyone else, blue is really the it color in the watch industry. Right. So I think setting it off with this blue crocodile strap is perfect, but being it is a silver dial, and if you are only going to have 2 watches in your collection, you want something that's versatile. So whether I want to put a brown strap or a black strap, it's going to work really well with this watch.
So obviously, you specialize in a couple of brands personally, JLC being one of them. Do you see a lot of demand for the Reverso? I mean, what does that look like?
It's not as much as their sport watches, but for the guys that really appreciate watchmaking, it really is the Reverso for them. So that's what they're coming in for. We have a decent variety of Reversos, but a lot of specialty orders that we do through JLC for the Reverso. The
Reverso is, of course, a dress watch, but really it's still substantive. There's body there. It's not ultra thin. I mean, it's a pretty sporty watch. So far, out of the 3 watches that we've got on the table, they all, yes, while err on a certain side, still are balanced.
Right.
The Bulgari is very thin, but it's very industrial. The Reverso is very classic, but it has some body to it.
For sure.
There's balance there.
And lastly, I picked this Alpine Eagle, and as we were talking about in regards to dials, I'm really a big fan of what certain companies are doing to really execute a beautiful, unique dial. Inspired by the Eye of the Eagle, it does come in a gray as well, but as we said, blue is extremely popular right now, and I think the combination of the high polish and brush, it just works so well. So this was reintroduced as kind of a remodeled San Moritz, but what I love most is just the execution of an integrated bracelet, and a lot of companies are doing that right now, but I think this one's done really well. The price is just under $13,000. You're getting a beautifully executed dial with the applied numerals. You're getting an exhibition case back with a beautiful movement, and I just love the bracelet. I think if you're gonna do a 2-watch collection, you should have a strap and you should have a bracelet. And I think that this wears well, whether you're going super casual or even if you want to wear it with the suit.
Yeah, agreed. I remember I was actually in Spain on vacation when this one was released, and it was released in a very interesting way. Chopard did a lot of work prior to get the endorsement of a lot of Instagram influencers, which really bothered me in a way because you had a lot of people reviewing watches. Not to say that their review doesn't matter, but there was nothing critical, right? No one was being critical. So my original, impression of the watch was I was just pissed. I was just annoyed that this is what a marketing dog and pony show. Let's have someone with actual integrity and experience criticize some of the obvious points here, right? To me, the ears here, whatever, it's a little too Nautilus-y, right? Yeah. But so is the Hublot, Classic Fusion and Big Bang, right? Now, when you're honest about these things, you can decide whether or not you actually like it. Right. You know what I mean? Right. And then once I actually went hands-on with the watch, I think that the dial, not just the pattern, but the coloring, the date window execution, the movement's really terrific. The watch does speak for itself, right? I personally find the bracelet a little bit too clunky. I like the way that AP's Royal Oak really tapers and becomes very thin. Sure. But again, I am, a guy that really likes that super refined elegance. Sure. So that's not really what the big buyer is today, Right. So bottom line is, I really appreciate the watch. I think it's very beautiful, but as soon as I saw it, I was just annoyed the way that it was originally marketed. You know, I mean, it was on every outfit of the day, fashion dude's Instagram. It was such an honor to be treated great by Chopard. I was like, come on, man.
You know what? I think social media, everyone knows, is so important, and having it well received is even more so important. Yeah. And I think they should have just been confident with the product because they made an amazing watch. And if they just would have put it out and let people speak honestly about it, I think it probably would have been better received. Yeah. But that being said, people that come in, because I am a fan of this watch and I bring them over to it and they try it on, they really like it. And I think that's probably what they should have done. In terms of tapering, I probably would enjoy if the bracelet tapered just a touch more. But that being said, at a price point under $13,000, I think it's really something special. And if I was going to go with a 2-watch collection, and I think it's funny because what we both did was really try to do some stuff that's different. Right. That's not really being worn by everybody. Right. And that's really what drew me to it.
No, I agree. I mean, there's no doubt that the watch speaks for itself now. They produce a great product. I often go for leather strap watches. I usually don't go for bracelets. But there's no denying that the way that a bracelet in a really well brushed and finished case catches the light, it really has a very special feeling. The watch is great. There's no doubt about it. I think the watch comes in a 41mm size and a 36mm variation. This is the 41, and 41s are usually, kind of big. This wears super well, maybe even smaller than some of the 40mm watches from other big brands. Ultimately, at the end of the day, 4 great watches. I'm interested to see what everyone else thinks. You guys out there, who, what team do you fall on? Who did a better job? And yes, this is a competition, okay? And we're keeping score. If you guys are considering adding another watch to your collection, whether from one of these brands, or Tudor, or Rolex, or Omega, shoot Anthony a message. Anthony's the manager here at London Jewelers Manhasset. Anthony, please give them your info.
So I can be reached, and we'll leave it in the description down below, but Anthony my last name, which is very long, Kozlowsky at londonjewelers.com. And you know what? If you think Christian won, come on in and tell me so to my face and show me what 2 watches that you would choose that are better than mine. So, yeah.
That's it. Awesome.
Cool.